Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Ask the Attorney Part 16.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, anyways. I'm pretty
Yep.
sure we're on Part 16. We've been doing this for a while now. I'm Maya Engel, live in our digital studio, joined by Mary Ann Wehr. She's an estate planning attorney with Great Lakes Center for Estate Planning. So, Mary Ann, gosh, it's nice to see you. I think we had our last session 2 weeks ago, but it seems like it's been a long time since we've talked.
I know, we took a little bit of break in April.
Mhm.
We were, I was very busy and we were having a hard time, like, pulling it together, and so it does feel like we haven't seen each other in a while, but we did see each
Yeah.
other a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
So I was glad to know that we were getting back together tonight. We get moving on it, yep.
Getting the band back together.
Get the band back together, that's right.
So before we get into tonight's topic, I want to remind anyone who's watching that if you have any questions for Mary Ann about our topic tonight, or just really about anything when it comes to estate planning, you can leave a comment and we will kind of take a break in our discussion and go through the comments and answer any of your questions. So feel free to, at any time, leave a comment or a question for Mary Ann. But Mary Ann, we were just talking about our topic today, and it was kind of a spur of the moment topic that you were actually, it was something that you were working on today.
That's right. That's right. It is a spur of the moment topic. And it's another one of those really important topics that people can become complacent about.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it kind of strikes them that they want to get moving on it. But the topic for tonight is really cottage planning. We have all kinds of beautiful vacation property lots that have been in families for many years. And so at some point, as they see generations growing and have a dream and a vision of their grandchildren and their grandchildren all having the same experiences that they've had, they start to think of people who own these homes, start to think of, I wonder how I can preserve that. And I have to say, kind of coming back to that whole complacency topic, um, I just want to share with the audience a couple of experiences I've had since we've been, well, maybe about a month ago. I had a 61-year-old cousin who did not wake up the next morning. She just didn't. And she was very active, very physically fit, very positive, lots of fun to be around. In fact, she had been just skiing with her family in Colorado like 2 weeks before.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was such an amazing shock that, I think we all envision people in poor health, or we kind of look across the horizon and we think that person will probably live until they're 100, and she was one of those people. And that person may not have as long of a life. I guess we're reminded every day, um, there is no promise of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I'll share one more story, not to bring everyone down, but this has been a tough one for me. Over the weekend, and I'm sure you reported it on the news, but over the past weekend, there was a horrendous accident about 2 miles away from my daughter-in-law's home. And this was an accident where 16 people of the same family were walking from a park to grandma's house. So you can imagine it was I don't know, a birthday party or something where all these people were together. And a drunk driver came out of nowhere and hit that entire family of 16. Two of them were killed, a 30-year-old man and a 42-year-old man. And then 13 of them were hospitalized, some with life-threatening injuries. And the hospitalizations were like from age 2 to age 61. And one of the men who were killed at the scene was a partner of my son's on the ambulance.
Oh, wow.
So it really struck home. Another 30-year-old and a 42-year-old innocently with family. And I mean, it is the most horrendous thing that happens, but it is a reminder that there's no promise of tomorrow. And it's a reminder of no matter how amazing the moment is, it can end. And so being complacent about planning for your legacy, planning for your future, I hate to be that person that says you just never know, but those are two experiences in my life just recently that have really struck home. Both of them hit me where I live, if You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the one where just the oddity that such a horrendous thing can happen to a family and then have this level of connection to my family is to my, my deceased son. It's just so striking for me. So it brings forward this idea of the estate planning is so covers so much ground, and we've talked about so much ground.
Mhm.
Well, this time of the year, if there's anything seasonal about estate planning, it seems to be people are returning to their cottages and they're looking around and they're saying, I want everyone in our family to be able to enjoy this for generations to come. And that drives people to come to see me. We have spoken a bit on our live streams about deeds, about ladybird deeds that will transfer some property. But that's usually from, mom and dad to their one or two children, oftentimes with the idea that maybe that child will live in the home or maybe the child will sell the home. But that kind of conveyance is generally not, people aren't thinking about 50 years down the road. They're just thinking about the next generation. Um, and so when they start to think about these properties like waterfront property, that has very special meaning because everything that's ever happened there was happy. People were voting, they're roasting marshmallows, they're laughing, they're playing cards, and they just want that to continue. Then they start to think, boy, if this property had to be sold, then it couldn't be replaced. And so they want to keep it for their kids, keep it for their memory. So that's kind of where cottage planning and just deeding a home to someone kind of starts to split. There's a big division as to what a family's goals are with that.
Especially because it could be kind of like multiple families that go to the cottage. Like I know for me growing up, my grandparents had a cottage and me and my family would go there, but so would my mom's sister and my mom's brother and their family. So it's not like you said, it's not just what's going to happen with the next generation. It's a long line of family members. Sometimes that could be the case.
You're exactly correct. And that's the type of scenario that people who come to me with a cottage planning questions are looking to allow to occur even after they've gone, because they love that. They love that their family can come, cousins spend time with cousins, and all of the wonderful things that family stands for.
Mhm. And so because of that, it's important to have a plan.
It is important to have a plan. And a cottage plan is a very structured thing. The intention of it is really to promote family harmony, for use of the family cottage for generations of the family. And when you talk about transcending generations, and you said it, so if you imagine you have, first you have grandma and grandpa owning the property, then maybe you have grandma and grandpa die, and maybe you have mom and a brother and a sister. Well, now if they start to, and you have just this normal succession,
Mhm.
um, they start to die. Now you've got mom and a brother and 7 cousins, and so
Yeah.
it starts to get very, very confusing. And each person in that ownership stream, if you will, they have their own goals and their own plans pretty much. And so the real truth is when you set it up in that kind of succession plan in that way, each owner is depending upon all other owners not to want to sell. And and sometimes in life, you're going to be, your next job is in North Carolina. You may never get back to Michigan. You're thinking to yourself, boy, I sure could use the money from that property versus have the property. And so that can start to cause a little conflict. And for you to get out of your property, maybe no one else who owns the property with you can actually afford to buy you out. So it can really cause, um, you know, people in that kind of environment to start to think, well, what can I do to to get my money out, to get my share out? I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Mhm.
And one of the common ways is to file a lawsuit. It's called an action for partition, and generally that will cause the property to be sold. So you may have one of 8 owners who wants to sell, but the court has no option but to, if nobody can come up with the money to pay him or her, the court, is going to say, okay, the property will have to be sold and the proceeds split among those 8, which isn't the goal at all. It's not the goal of generational planning. And so the other thing is couples who wanted generational planning for their property are really oftentimes balancing a property tax. If you bought your house, 50 or 60 years ago, your property tax is at a lower rate than it would be if there was a reassessment and bumped up. And we call that uncapping of property taxes. So if you have a structure where even there's 3 or 4 different owners, and one of those owners becomes divorced and the divorced spouse makes some claim and gets part of the property in a divorce settlement, first of all, that's not very pretty for any of the owners. And secondly, that will likely cause an uncapping of the property tax, which is detrimental to all of the owners. And sometimes property tax can be so high that the owners really now no longer can afford or want to afford the property. So putting together a plan can preserve family harmony, and allow people to not have those risks. So the ownership structure of the property changes a bit. We don't need to talk about that because it gets very legally sticky. Not sticky, but too far into the weeds. But we do have something that lawyers will use called a cottage plan, vacation property plan, you cabin plan, camp plan, that kind of thing. But it will allow the property to be placed into a structure where all of the same people own a portion of that, so they don't lose their interest. But it eliminates the ability for the property tax to increase. It eliminates opportunity for irreconcilable family disputes to result in one party initiating or this action of partition. And it really allows for harmonious movement of the house, of the property. And that's what people are really looking for when they're looking for a cottage plan, a generational plan. My dog is really ringing a bell. Wow.
Uh-oh.
That's his outside bell. He can wait. But it really, when you make a cottage plan, you're really setting up a management plan for that cottage. It will include like mechanisms for what people don't think about is how are we going to do repairs? Who's going to do the repairs? How are we going to pay for those costs? How are we going to share that? And it settles any question about, well, I'm never there, so I don't know why I'm paying the same amount that you're paying, when you can, put an agreement together that says you can be part of this. It also, believe it or not, usage is how is the property going to be used? How are we going to schedule families? Is it just ad hoc? Because that would be a disaster, right? I can use it anytime I want to. Oh, you're here. Well, I wanted to be here, so you can eliminate that. And answer questions in the agreement, like can the property be rented out? Because property that's rented out for a certain number of days in a year starts to be commercial property versus, there's just a lot of laws like to get in the way. Taxing likes to get in the way. But will the owners, like if one family is using the cottage, can other co-owners come and join them? Or do they have to leave those people alone to enjoy the cottage? All of those questions can be answered in a cottage plan, in the operating agreement of a cottage. And you can also cover, which we were talking about, when someone wants to transfer their ownership, they just don't want to be part of it anymore. you can cover what happens under that circumstances in the cottage agreement, the operating agreement, so that they can be bought out without all the others having to sell the property. So you really are creating a plan that promotes family harmony. It is kind of setting the rules for the usage of the property, who's paying the bills of the property, and the intention is then to have those rules in place and then managed by members of the family to
Mhm.
follow those rules. And it is a very successful way of building, generational use of the property and really the harmony that you're looking for. So this is the time of the year that people are knocking on my door and saying, "We've got this lake property. Love it if my great grandchildren could use it." What are the types of ways that we can set that up?
Mhm. So
So
it really sounds like establishing a cottage plan is a no-brainer.
I think it is. I think it's a really good thing, but again, people put it off. They become complacent. They think, "Oh, I'll just give it to my kids. My kids can deal with it." Usually that first generation can deal with it pretty well, but not always. But really, if a family, if the owners of a property are looking for their family to be able to enjoy it generationally, um, this is to me, it's a no-brainer. The other thing is, certain families work differently. Maybe in this case, mom and dad want to just set all the rules. I don't want to deal with trying to get everybody's input. I just want to set all the rules, and this is how it will work. And because the rules are not, there's never going to be anything totally crazy. Or maybe sometimes they want to work with their children and say, okay, we're setting up a cottage plan. How do you see this? And by the way, are you interested in being a part owner of that cottage, or has your interest moved on? I know families whose children maybe purchase the cottage next door to theirs. No, they don't have any need or interest in being part of that plan, right? So it really opens up the conversation to say, we are making this investment for you to have this cottage for your use for your life. Maybe you'd rather have the money. Maybe you'd rather it be sold. Um, and so it really opens up that conversation among family. And, no surprises. Nobody has to worry about what are mom and dad going to do with the cottage. Boy, I want the cottage. I can't, and everybody knows property has just expanded, so the cost associated oftentimes with buying like the type of property that people have, whether it's on Long Lake or Elk Lake or Torch Lake, you name the lake, it is it's very hard for the normal person to afford that. So so that is what's knocking on my door lately, and it's great fun to help families resolve, you know, understand there's a path forward,
Mhm.
resolve it, feel good about the resolution, know that it's not going to one day be owned by all ex-spouses.
Right.
know, and that the property tax can be managed. So those are all good reasons to think about a cottage plan to go along with your estate plan. It's a separate plan, it's kind of almost you could think of it as an addition, but it is even if you have an estate plan, but now you've got this cottage and you're starting to think, what do I do with it? It is an opportunity for you to invest in your family's future.
So, one thing that you mentioned earlier that I thought was pretty interesting. So, again, let's use your example. Say 8 kids own a property. If one out of 8 does want to sell that cottage, that's all it takes. They just need one person.
So they can, yeah, you just need one, and they do have to file a lawsuit. That's called an action for partition.
Mhm.
But that's not, oftentimes when I talk to other lawyers just about the use of a ladybird deed, backing off from this whole, like, really just the use of a ladybird deed. A lot of times clients will say, I will sometimes like you don't have control over what people want to do, but I will sometimes always not encourage multiple owners on a ladybird deed. If it's two, I might just point out some of the shortcomings, but if it's three or more, I will start to tell them about, you're just walking your children up to a lawsuit that's called a action for partition. One of your children is not going to want to own that house, and the other two are going to want to. The one that doesn't want to can file a lawsuit, and the court has, either those others can buy them out, or if they can't, they can file a lawsuit. And the court has really no option but to say, well, this person owns this property, wants out, and there's no way to split a house and allow him to sell like a quarter of the house. So they provide the remedy of having to sell, and others. I mean, I might be oversimplifying that, but it is a risk of multiple owners. So go ahead.
Does having a cottage plan prevent that from happening?
It does, because what happens is you put the cottage into a cottage trust, and then it is owned by the cottage. The entity, the trust, owns the plan, and then each individual owns part of that trust. So and it describes methods in which you can pull out of the trust. Sometimes it's, well, if Junior doesn't want it, let him out, but he doesn't get compensated for anything. Or, maybe allow him to for the others to pay him over time, over a 10 or a period of time, or just allow other action, anything you want to kind of decide, you can put into the trust. The other thing that it does is, on the other side, the flip side is, there needs to be money put into something to keep the property running, to keep the taxes paid, to pay the utilities, pay the repairs. And it allows facilities for you to put facilities into what I call the operating agreement, but allow facilities to go in there that say, if Junior can't pay, then maybe initially his time at the cottage is cut back. And at some point, if he hasn't paid, for a period of time, then maybe it's a forced sale. Then maybe the others need to buy him out because he's not able to be part of the group, however you want to say that. But so there's protections on both sides. Somebody that wants to sell, somebody that's not contributing. But these are all, you don't have to put those provisions in, but it's a capability to put the provisions in and really help the property, because the goal is, to harmonious, use of the property by the family over generations. And so in that situation, you start to look at it as a business or a company, and people need to put in it like a club, like they need to put in their money or they can't be part of the club kind of thing.
Gotta pay their fees, their dues.
Yep. Exactly. And oftentimes they are called dues, membership dues, or sometimes a couple might purchase a life insurance policy and put that into an investment that their goal is, for as long as that investment is active, it can pay the bills of the property, or it can pay a portion of the bills always, or whatever. But there's many ways of keeping the property so that its taxes don't skyrocket, and no one person can force the sale of it. And the other thing is, you can manage who will be the owners within the construct, and so you can exclude ex-spouses. You don't have to. But in the world of law, there might be situations where that ex-spouse can get their hands on a piece of the property, a portion. The other thing is, when you've put it into the trust, it is protected from each individual. See, if each individual in this ownership of 8, and everybody has 1/8 ownership, if someone gets in a horrible car wreck and there's lawsuits, really the credit. So in my example that I opened up with, maybe the person that hit that group doesn't have anything, but they have a ownership in a very expensive piece of property. Well, the lawsuit's going to go right at that property, and it could force a sale of that property right out from underneath the others.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of protections that can be put into place for those unknown. And I know this was a very kind of in the weeds conversation, but I did want to kind of get out there because people are right now, they're thinking about they're returning to their cottages, they're taking the cleaning up the gardens, and they're thinking of
Mhm.
a beautiful summer in front of them, and how it'd be nice if they could continue this for generations.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a topic that it's very relatable for me and my family. My grandparents had their cottage. I'm trying to think if like their family had it before them. I'm not sure how long it's been in the family, but um my grandma, she passed away over 10 years ago very unexpectedly, and she was kind of the one who was in charge of all the bills, all like the planning and everything like that, but she did not have an estate plan. So there
Hmm.
was nothing really put in place for what happens to her house, but also the cottage. And I know my grandma would have loved to see the cottage continue. Like we always thought that it would come down to us grandkids and then it would go to like our kids. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. My mom and her siblings did have to sell it, and that was like one of the hardest things that they had to go through in the whole grieving process of just losing their parents. Because it was a place that had so many special memories, and it was a place that brought all of us together. We didn't all live in the same town. We could all come to the cottage, and just so many great memories there. And I wish it could have stuck around in our family longer. But yeah, so just like everything that we've talked about has been so interesting for me to learn because I knew nothing about estate planning coming into this segment. And I was even, I know I told you this, Mary Ann, like I was nervous to do this because I did not know a lot at all about this topic. And luckily, you have really kind of like held my hand throughout all of this and it really helped me out. But it's just really eye opening for me because this isn't something that you learn in school. They don't really tell you like what an estate plan is, why it's important to have. And I wish I knew what I knew now, like 10 years ago
Yeah.
when, my grandparents were still around. And I wish I could kind of tell them, like, hey guys, just in case, like, we do need some plans set up.
You need some plans, and you bring up that brings up like you said, you've learned a lot. I am all about education. I think
Mhm.
that and so I encourage people to come into my office and talk with me openly about what their goals and their objectives are, and let's look to see if there's some kind of a tool that can help you get there if you're comfortable with that tool. And if after we've explored you're like, well, thank you, but I just, I guess I'm better off than I thought I was, or whatever the decision. I'm fine with that as long as I love having the opportunity to discuss options with people. And so when you think about what you didn't know about estate planning, right?
Mhm.
That's an intimidating thing. That's intimidating to say, I'm going to go talk to this person about estate planning, but I'm going to have to tell her I have no idea what these words mean, right?
Yep.
So I just want to make sure people know I know you have no idea what those words mean. I have no expectation that you're going to come in and say, well, I think I need, whatever, and this and that, because I would probably look at you and go, I'm
Whoa.
not sure. How do you know that?
Yeah, you
You
must
know,
watch your online segments.
exactly. Well, that would be, yeah, yeah. Well, that'd be dangerous because I don't give any advice here. So, but just information. But that is really like the first segment with me. I spent a couple of hours with a family today with their cottage planning and just talked to them through the opportunity, and they took a deep breath and said, we think we need to talk about this. Is that okay? I was like, of course, so, so anyway, I know that it's, yeah. So don't be intimidated. Just give me a call. Come on in. I'm
Mhm.
the same person there as I am here. I just really want to be of service. So,
Yeah. Wanting to help people. So if
yep.
you do want to get in contact with Mary Ann, I have her phone number and her website in a link in the description of this video, so you can always reach out to her through that. And also, if you have any questions for Mary Ann in our future segments, you can always send us an email to our newsroom. That is just newsroom@upnorthlive.com. Maybe put in the subject line, ask the attorney, and leave your questions. And if you send a question too, that also might like spark oh, this should be our topic of our next
Exactly.
segment. Because we have done 16 segments now. We've talked about a lot of things. I know, Mary Ann, you were saying earlier, like, gosh, I don't know like where we're gonna go from here because we've already covered a lot of stuff. So yeah, like don't hesitate to ask any questions. Something that I've learned through this and just throughout life is that no question is a stupid question. So don't
That's
hesitate to.
that's precisely like you said, spur of the moment today. I worked with that family, but I have in the last couple of weeks, 3 other families have talked to me about the same topic, right? And so I thought, this is a hot topic right
Yeah,
now.
right.
So yeah. So yeah, we welcome your questions. I welcome you to come into my office. I want to help you because I do believe everyone should have some level of an estate plan for their life and also for their legacy planning. That's
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Mary Ann, for all of this very important information on estate planning for a cottage. I know, like you said, here in Northern Michigan, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this topic. So thank you so much for providing all of your valuable information.
You bet. You bet.
Yes.
Good to see you again. Bye bye, everyone.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.